The Mystery of the Bloofer Lady, Dracula Chapter 13, Analyzed. Picture this. It's late 19th century London, and children are turning up missing, only to be found later with strange, rat-like bites on their throats. Let's just dive right into the heart of this Gothic terror, shall we? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're exploring the pivotal Chapter 13 of Bram Stoker's masterpiece, Dracula. It's a chapter where tragedy, mystery, and deep psychological horror perfectly collide.
Section 1. The Hampstead Horror, a chilling discovery. To truly grasp the horror of this chapter, we actually have to look at the very end of it, where Stoker leaves us with a series of creepy newspaper clippings that completely flip the script. The narrative moves from personal grief to a massive public panic, setting a stage of total dread.
So these clippings pose one terrifying question. Who exactly is the Bloofer Lady? It's this strange, childlike nickname the lured toddlers use to describe their attacker. Basically, they tell the police that a Bloofer Lady, which is just a kid's mispronunciation of beautiful lady, asked them to come for a walk. Now that sounds innocent enough, right? Almost like a playground game, but the reality is incredibly sinister.
Just listen to how the Westminster Gazette reported it on September 25th. Several cases have occurred of young children straying from home. They had been with a Bloofer Lady. All who have been missed at night have been slightly torn or wounded in the throat. The article even brings up another poor child found terribly weak and looking totally emaciated under a furze bush. What's really wild about this report is how it desperately tries to rationalize the attacks. They blame a stray dog or maybe a rat with a system or method of its own. But we know better, don't we? This is targeted, methodical predation.
Part 2. Angel in the House, the Victorian Ideal. To understand exactly how we got to this grisly point, we need to rewind a bit and look at who the real victim and, spoiler alert, ultimate suspect actually is.
We're talking about the recently deceased Lucy Westenra. She completely embodied what was known as the Victorian ideal, specifically the angel in the house. This was a massive cultural expectation back in the 1890s. So what did that actually mean for a woman back then? Well, it demanded absolute feminine purity, domesticity, and total innocence. Women were supposed to be sweet, passive, and entirely dependent on male protection. And before her tragic illness, Lucy hit every single one of those marks. She was the ultimate symbol of untainted femininity.
Let's break down her profile while she was still alive. Lucy was a 19-year-old with this radiant, ethereal beauty. People absolutely adored her, so much so that she famously received 3 marriage proposals in a single day. We're talking Arthur Holmwood, Dr. John Seward, and Quincy Morris all shooting their shot. But she had a physical vulnerability too. She was prone to sleepwalking. Ultimately, her innocent yet highly flirtatious nature made her a beloved figure, but, as you'll see, that exact same nature might have actually been her undoing.
This brilliantly illustrates the subtle cracks in her perfect facade. In a letter to her friend Mina, Lucy writes, "Why can't they let a girl marry 3 men, or as many as want her?" Now, she says it as a joke, but it definitely highlights a naive vanity and a sort of unchecked sensuality. To modern ears, it's just a bit of harmless fun, right? But to Victorian critics, and within the specific logic of Stoker's novel, this flirtatious desire for multiple suitors was seen as a major, fatal vulnerability. It was a lapse in restraint that arguably threw the door wide open to supernatural corruption.
Section 3. A bizarre burial, the tension breaks. This brings us to the breaking point of the story, and the core events of Chapter 13, where Dracula's relentless attacks have finally claimed Lucy's life.
But, as we know in this Gothic universe, death is rarely the end of the line. Let's trace the chaotic timeline of her burial. First off, Lucy and her mother, who tragically died of a sudden heart attack during the final vampire assault, are laid to rest together. Behind the scenes, Professor Van Helsing is performing a secret rite, placing wild garlic and a solid gold crucifix in Lucy's coffin. Meanwhile, out in London, a newly married Mina Harker spots a truly shocking sight. Count Dracula himself, looking noticeably younger. No way, right? Back at the tomb, Van Helsing actually plans to preemptively decapitate Lucy and take out her heart. But when he goes to do it, he finds the crucifix has been stolen by an opportunistic maid who is preparing the body. So, the plan is aborted. Now Van Helsing declares they just have to wait.
Before we move on, there is a fascinating, almost darkly comedic piece of irony in this chapter revolving around the number 4. Arthur Holmwood, Lucy's grieving fiancé, tells Dr. Seward that he feels he and Lucy were truly married in the eyes of God because he gave his blood to her during a transfusion to try and save her life. The crucial point here? He doesn't know the full story. Lucy actually received blood from 4 different men: Arthur, Dr. Seward, Van Helsing, and Quincy. Van Helsing actually points out the grim humor later on that, technically speaking, this makes the innocent Lucy a polyandrist.
This morbid irony absolutely breaks Professor Van Helsing. He has a full-on hysterical breakdown, laughing uncontrollably in a carriage with Dr. Seward. He eventually explains himself with this incredibly powerful quote: "King laughing he come, like the sunshine, and he ease off the strain again, and we bear to go on with our labor, what it may be." It is a brilliant psychological moment. Van Helsing's laughter is a totally necessary coping mechanism. It's how his brain deals with the grim absurdity of their situation and the massive emotional toll of battling an ancient evil.
Part 4. Purity Turned to Corruption, Victorian Anxieties. Let's zoom out for a second and look at how this builds into the broader context of the era.
Lucy's tragic narrative isn't just a scary story about a fictional monster. It served as a massive mirror for real-world late 19th century societal fears. Just think about what she actually goes through physically: extreme pallor, constant blood loss, lethargy, labored breathing. These symptoms directly paralleled massive medical panics of the time. We're talking tuberculosis, which was killing over 100,000 people a year in England, alongside pernicious anemia. Plus, her sleepwalking tapped right into Victorian medical obsessions with somnambulism and hysteria, which are conditions often disproportionately assigned to women. And finally, her flirtatious nature played into intense cultural debates about the new woman, a term for advocates of female autonomy. To a conservative Victorian reader, Lucy's unchecked impulses were a terrifying gateway to disease and total moral ruin.
Section 5. The Bloofer Lady Awakens, the Ultimate Inversion. Which brings us full circle right back to those missing children. Because the horrific truth of the Hampstead mystery is that the beautiful, innocent Lucy Westenra is the very monster stalking the heath. The contrast here is just incredibly stark. Living Lucy was sweet, innocent, passive, and entirely dependent on male protection. Undead Lucy? She is voluptuous, cruel, predatory, and insatiably hungry. Vampirism didn't just kill her, it inverted literally everything she was. It took her latent vanity and turned it into unchecked consumption. It took her potential for maternal instincts and twisted them, turning her into a cold-blooded predator who lures toddlers just to feed on their blood. Van Helsing observes this horrifying change firsthand, noting, "The sweetness was turned to a damnatine, heartless cruelty, and the purity to voluptuous wantonness. The angel in the house is completely gone. What stands in her place is a dark, twisted reflection of everything Victorian society feared a woman could become if she slipped her moral restraints." And that leaves us with a fascinating, provocative question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. As you reflect on Chapter 13 and the terrifying rise of the Bloofer Lady, ask yourself this: is Lucy Westenra simply the innocent victim of an unstoppable supernatural monster? Or, within the context of the novel's 1890s morality, is she a tragic casualty of her own vanity and a society that repressed her until she violently shattered those bounds? It's a debate scholars are literally still having today. I highly encourage you to read the text again with this in mind and decide for yourself.